Okay, let's talk about layers more in depth. I'm going to open my layer menu, and if I were to hide this layer, it looks like it's gone, but I can always bring it back. Remember, we had that layer that we worked on before. It's still there, it's just hiding. So I'm going to hide both of these layers and add a new layer, and we're going to talk about the order of the layers and why they matter. So for layer number 3, let's tap on the layer and choose Fill Layer. It's going to fill it with a color, in this case pink, because that's what I had selected. Let's add a new layer on top of that. It will name it Layer 4. Let's change our color. I'm just going to choose a green. Go back to our layer menu and choose Fill Layer, and now our canvas is green. So it's filling the entire area of the canvas with that color. So if I hide the green one, you can see the pink one below it. You can reduce the opacity or make your layer more transparent by tapping the N and dragging this down. So the maximum means that it's as opaque as it can get, and as you drag it down it becomes more transparent, so you can sort of see through it, and making it 0 is basically like the layer isn't even showing at all. So the reason that green is showing right now instead of pink is because green is above the pink layer. So if I wanted the pink to show, I could drag the green below it, and now it's showing pink. Let's delete these layers by dragging them to the left and choosing Delete. So why are layers so important? Well, they allow you to edit things independently from one another. So just to show you, right now I have these squiggles on a layer, and as I do the checkbox, you'll see the layer hide and then come back. I have the word Y on a layer, and then I have the word layers on their own layer. Having each of these elements on its own layer allows me to really easily move them around and resize them without affecting all of the other elements. So for example, this word Y, if I wanted to move that around on my canvas a little bit, I could select that layer and then tap on my arrow up here, and now I can move it around without moving everything. Same thing with the word layers. I can move that, I can resize it by dragging this corner, tap that arrow to commit those changes. The squiggle one, I could even rotate it. So let's select this layer, tap the arrow, and I can rotate it around. I can flip it horizontally and vertically. So having each of these on its own layer makes all of that really easy. You can imagine how difficult it would be if all of these were together. In fact, let's show you that. So to put all of the layers together, we can merge them. And a quick way of doing that is taking 2 fingers and squeezing them. Now everything that's showing is on one layer. So if I did want to resize some of these things, it is possible. Like right now I could select the word Y and move it around by tapping my selection tool, using freehand and drawing a little circle around it, and then I can move it around. But as I move it, you'll see I sort of cut off a piece of that squiggle up there. So that's not going to work. I'll have to redo that, redo my selection and make sure I'm not on that squiggle. And now I can move this around. And as soon as I let go, it's still going to be on the same layer as everything else. So if I wanted to move it around again, and select it, now I'm stuck because it's stuck to that squiggle. Same thing with recoloring. If I wanted to recolor something, it would be way easier if it's on its own layer. So I'm going to undo this a couple of times. Just tap with 2 fingers until I have all of these layers back to normal. And let's see. Okay, it looks like we're back. So let's talk about how to recolor something. So if we want the word Y to turn black, let's tap on the layer and we can choose Alpha Lock, and this is going to lock in the pixels that are already there. So let's choose black as our color, go back to our layer menu, tap and choose Fill Layer. If you remember before when we filled our layers with pink and green, it filled the entire layer, but because we have Alpha Lock on, it's only filling inside of the pixels that are already colored in with blue on our canvas. Another neat thing about layers is that you can duplicate them to create a copy. So on the layers layer number 3, we're going to duplicate it by sliding it to the left and choosing Duplicate. It doesn't look like anything happened because we just have the word layer on top of itself, but as soon as I take this one on the bottom and select it with my arrow and then move it, you can see now I have another copy of it. And that makes it really easy to do things like shadows. So let's move our layers to the right a little bit, and we're going to fill it with black by tapping the layer, choosing Alpha Lock, tapping it again and choosing Fill Layer, and now we have a nice shadow. So shadows on paper are really manual because you have to go in and trace all of these areas where you want black, but digitally you can create them really easy using layers. The order of the layers, again, does matter. So right now the black one is below the blue one. If we were to move this black one up, it would look like it had a blue shadow. So whichever one is closer to the bottom, closer to your background color, which by the way is always going to be default of white, and you can hide it if you want. But whatever one is lowest is going to appear below your other layers. Now let's say we wanted to move around the word layers a little bit and move it up. So what we could do is first move our shadow layer and move it up. Then we could find the blue one and move that one up. But it's not going to look exactly like it did before, so let's undo that. So we can group layers together so that we can edit them sort of together without merging them. So in other words, let's create a group here by swiping to the left on the two layers that we want to group, swiping to the right, and then choosing group. Now we have this new layer that's called new group, and it's essentially combining the two below it into a single group that we can move all together. We can still do each of these ones separately because it's just a group. If we wanted to merge them, we could do that by tapping on the word new group and choosing flatten, and that makes all of this on one layer, so now we can't edit those independently from one another, which, as you're probably learning by now, is what we want. We want these to be independent so that we can make changes. Let's say later on in the project we decide that we don't want the shadow anymore. We can just hide that layer and the shadow goes away. If these layers were merged together, we would somehow have to erase the shadow or rewrite the word layer. Layers are one of the most important things about creating digital artwork, and if you're stuck, here's what I recommend. Every time you have a new element that you'd like to create on your artwork, create a new layer. So anything that you're going to want to be a different color, especially if it's a completely different type of element like these squiggles versus the lettering. Sometimes it can be hard to figure out if you are doing calligraphy or hand lettering, if you want to put a different layer for each word. I usually do that if I'm doing something short, like a few words, and especially if you want to do different colors and different effects on each word, then just create a new layer for each word. I want to change the color of these squiggles so that they're multiple colors. So the way to do this is by using alpha lock. Let's tap on that layer and choose alpha lock. Now let's change our color. We're going to use pink. And my brush is still oil paint. So now making sure that I'm on that squiggly layer, which I like to just double check by hiding it and showing it so I know I'm on the layer I expect. Now I can color over these squiggles with pink, and because we have alpha lock on, it's only going to let me color inside of those areas. So if I color on the white, it won't work, it'll just be on those areas. When I zoom in here, I can see that I want it to be more of a transition from pink to blue. Right now it's just kind of a stark edge. This is where we can use the tool that's called Smudging. It's the one that's right to the right of your paintbrush, so tap on that to open your smudge brush library, and I'm going to use Airbrush. So this brush works kind of like finger painting. You smear the paint together like this, and now we're creating a much more smooth transition between those colors. Because we still have alpha lock on, it's only smearing the paint within this area. Let's talk about layer opacity for a minute. You may be more familiar with the term transparency, but opacity is basically how see-through a layer is. So up here we have the word opacity. It's at max. If I drag this down, you're going to start to be able to see through it a little bit, so you can see through to the black layer that's below it. Opacity is a nice one to use because it allows you to get some more depth and dimension inside of your piece. Okay, there's a couple more fun things we can talk about. Let's talk about our adjustments. So the adjustments is this wand in the top left corner, and whatever adjustment you choose right now is going to affect only the layer that you have selected. With this layer selected, I'm going to go to my adjustments and find hue, saturation, and brightness. As I slide the hue slider around, you can see what's happening here. It's changing the colors and it's changing everything on that layer. So as I drag it around, it changes not only the pink, but also the blue. And if you like it, you can just tap on the wand to commit those changes. You can undo it immediately by tapping with 2 fingers, or you can redo it and bring it back by tapping with 3. Another adjustment that I like to use is blur. I'm going to open my layers and find that shadow of the word layer, and then I'm going to turn alpha lock off. Then let's go to our adjustments and find Gaussian blur, and as I drag my pencil to the right, it's going to start blurring that layer. So right now it's as it was before because I have the percentage set to 0, and as I drag this to the right, it's going to blur it out more. So doing a subtle blur on a shadow like this, like maybe around 7%, can make it look more realistic. So hopefully you're starting to see all of the powerful features that are available with the Procreate app. Personally, I think that layers is one of the most important things about digital artwork. It just allows for so many more possibilities than you'd ever be able to do on paper. The combination of layers and the amazing brush library that Procreate has given you allows for endless possibilities. For more tutorials about how to use Procreate and how to learn calligraphy and hand lettering, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also join our free private Facebook group. Just search for Intro to iPad Lettering with Lovely Loops on Facebook and you will find us, or you can find the link in the description below. You can post your work and ask questions, and we're always there to help you out. Thanks again and have fun with Procreate.